My name is Michael Miller. This is the Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. So, the last couple broadcasts have been pretty meaty in my mind, talking about Pilates as a language and then talking about core new tension yesterday. I just have three things on my list today, and the first title is Mind to Muscle Doesn't Cut It, at least within the MMP point of view of things. Okay, mind to muscle. See, mind to muscle. What does that mean? To me, that means when the mind says to move a muscle. Okay, so here's my hand, and my mind can say, okay, move it up, and I move it up. Okay. Now, if it's mind to breath to muscle, meaning you connect into the processes that are already happening, it's not just about the mind saying, do this. It's about the mind saying, fit into the flow that's already in process, which requires listening. So, I've come across some fantastic examples or performances of mind to muscle, and as an instructor, what I can add to that is the requirement that the mind listens to what's going on in order to move the muscle. That the mind, if it were to go in, you don't, okay, as an example, if you have two people throwing a jump rope for you in a crowd, and you say, okay, here's mind to muscle. And mind to muscle would just walk into the rope, expecting to jump, just not paying any attention to where the rope is in the process. Okay? And in this case, it's like your breathing is the rope. And to just walk into an effort without coordinating your effort to what else already is going on, doesn't work as well as going mind to breath to muscle, or mind to awareness, or mind to observing. But there's something beyond just the mind saying move, and then you move. To me, Pilates is the complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit, which means being, thinking, and observing. So just being and thinking leaves out a third of what Joe seeks to coordinate. And this mind to muscle, to me, you can tell or look, when you see someone just delivering from their mind to their muscle in their movement, right, there's no listening, and there's no observing. And it may look great, it may be controlled, but it's the complete coordination of body, mind, and more mind, and in that regard less than a complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit. My point of view, my opinion, MMP, okay? So, number two, why ankles and not metatarsals? Well, what I mean by that is, in the classical Pilates tradition, you see the use of pressing out through your ankles, say, on one direction of doing the rollover. You know, when you come back down, you're pressing through your heels. But there is no metatarsal engagement as there is engagement in the ankle. In classical Pilates work, you create an endpoint of tension at the ankle in several places, right? But in classical Pilates work, you also use a locked knee and a pointed toe, which to me is in direct contradiction to why you would use a rotation at the ankle, pressing out through your heel. And so, whether the title or the name of your Pilates is classical or real or authentic or what else is there? Original or you know, some adjective. What did I call that? God, a long time ago, all these words that you use to add to Pilates, to add the credibility of the adjective, as though it's an exclusive credibility because of the adjective. It's classical because of the word classical, or it's authentic because of the word authentic. You and I know that within MMP, there's an ideal there, and that's just another word for what Pilates might be considered, ideal Pilates, right? Oh, you must mean MMP. Well, not necessarily, but MMP is certainly one view of Pilates that sees an ideal within Joe's original work. I didn't make it up, it's just there. And so, you know, it's good to see that there's more expression on social media of Pilates movement, and then everyone's attempt to call it classical or authentic or real, or, you know, just some adjective to claim legitimacy or authority. Where for me, embodiment is the ultimate authority. And so I saw some mat work being done. It was beautifully controlled movement. And it was divided by body position from one exercise to the next without smearing the distinction between the exercises by flowing from one to the other, if that's possible. But when I see movement that's primarily done mind to muscle and delivered from the mind without any listening or connection to the jump rope of your breathing, the sensation that you're in, it lacks some of the appearance of what I consider to be Pilates mat. The ankles and the metatarsals, see, that's whatever language you use, but if you go back to classical or authentic or original or Joe's or whatever you want to call it, that shows, like Joe's book, locked knees and pointed toes, you're doing it classically, in the sense of the literal expression. So to me, that's historical reenactment. But a fuller expression of the historical reenactment would illuminate the ideal that exists within the historical. And so my message, of course, is to feel the difference, right? If you're good enough to actually do the Pilates work with pointed toe and locked knees, you know, teaser, boomerang, any of those things or kinds of positions, the tree on the short box and on a reformer, any position where traditionally you've got a locked knee and a pointed foot, that's to me an influence of a bias toward dance that misses the essence of the science in the method, in Pilates itself. It's appealing to an aesthetic look rather than to a physical difference. By physical, I mean sensational. By the way your body is engaged and the effect that the engagement has on the overall engagement of the musculature that affects how heavy you are in space. So, number 3, all of this is sort of wrapped into one, because there I see a beautiful demonstration of Pilates mat work. And number 3 is that an MMP instructor, you know, what's an MMP instructor? An MMP instructor is somebody that understands the idea within the original work. And an MMP instructor can take the most super advanced student or teacher beyond themselves if they're unaware of the ideal that exists within what they're demonstrating. And so, whenever I ask someone to teach me that's a student, they say, oh, I could never teach you anything. And I say, of course you could. And if nothing else, just by being observant, by having your observing participate in my movement, you know, that's attention. And that attention, that being observed, amplifies a student's focus, concentration, ability. I also told someone that you could just say one thing to me throughout the whole class. You could say, well, is that the best you can do? You know, you're not taking on the burden of what would make it better. You're just encouraging the person to do their best and asking them if it's the best that they could do. But there's so much more that you can offer if you have an appreciation for this point of view. You can take a person who's in a rut of locked knee and pointed toe and ask them to experience the difference in sensation between that and an endpoint of tension at the metatarsals. And specifically, what would that do? That gives you more uniform engagement. That gives you a more uniformly development in the body as you're moving. That means your contrology develops the body uniformly. So in being aware of core tension and the target of uniform engagement that gives you uniform development, because for me, from my position, and I encourage you to realize that no matter who you know or who you knew or how many people you work with that knew Joe, even if you knew Joe, Joe knew what he knew and stuck to it religiously. 40 years over his career, the sequence, the choreography, the sequence of his mat did not change. So all of the usurpers and the encroachers and the poachers of Pilates that would deny its essence for the sake of individual interpretation, it's all out there. But those at the top of a classical pyramid are some of the people that are most interested in getting improvement, getting instruction to help make them better, because there's nobody around to take them into somewhere that takes them beyond themselves. And that's why number 3 I say, an MMP instructor takes a super advanced performer of Pilates beyond themselves. If in coming to them, you know, they only have a mind-to-muscle delivery. If coming to them and there isn't a flow requisite to find it, or that you get the flow that facilitates, not requisite, but the flow that facilitates the depth of the dive into your concentration to achieve complete coordination of your capacities in being, thinking, and observing. So that's, in a way, that's what I'm grateful for personally in my world of Pilates as an instructor, is that my view is ideal, and my view goes past classical or authentic or original or real. All of those are adjectives trying to assert legitimacy and authority and credibility to what they say, or what they do, more importantly, right? And yet movement never lies. That's Martha Graham's father's statement that Martha Graham quoted a lot. Movement never lies. And my statement is that movement reveals itself, or the body reveals itself through movement. The same kind of thing. So, as a teacher, as a Kokopelli teacher that traveled around the world and visited places more than once, it became normal more than not for the owner of the studio to have me teach their most challenging clients to see how I might deal with them. And then there would be this attempt to go into a whole history of their background. And I had teachers realize, well, you know, that doesn't much matter because you're just going to take what you see and go with that, which is pretty true, right? Of course, I'd like to know significant detail, and yet even if the detail is that they broke their back or that they have rods in their spine or any of that stuff, if it mentally, that would be a good title in a way. If you let what's in your mind determine what you're going to do next, then you put a damper on or blinders on the effort toward coordination of being, thinking, and observing. And if the thinking precedes or precludes or predetermines what you're going to do, then you're living within a mental expression or a mental view or a mental world of Pilates. And mostly, and part of it comes from the breadth of the spectrum that, as an instructor, I've been able to interact with, that you have too, I'm sure, and it's always expanding. But part of that is realizing that regardless of what you know, your engagement as a Pilates instructor within the MMP point of view is to be there with your student or students or school or studio or business or union or insurance company, you know, whatever grouping you want to outline. It's the same with them as with the individual, in that your target is the same thing. And so I'm grateful that I've come to this point of view that for me now exists so clearly and simply, in that it takes the evidence of 3 things in Joe's book, and based on that makes a reasoned argument for an ideal within Joe's original work that you can feel. The MMP point of view is sensational, not just generally speaking and not after the fact sensational, like do this and it will be good for you, and do this and someday I'll tell you whether or not you're good enough to do it on your own or to share it with somebody else. Again, in that movement, on the single leg stretch, I see the movement of the legs, but only if any, a gratuitous touch of the arm that crosses the body in touching the knee. And that may be whatever kind of label you want to put on it in terms of where the Pilates comes from, but it certainly doesn't match the film in Joe. And beyond that, see, when you understand that rolling like a ball comes before the single leg stretch, because you're trying to deepen your grip at the hip from the connection between your hands and your shins by the tension of your hands pulling in and your shins pushing out. That oppositional tension allows you to go deeper into your grip. And then the challenge becomes, can you hold the depth of that grip when you control the weight of one leg reaching away from center? But the grip on the leg that you have connection with is still a grip. It's still contact. There's still created tension to maintain and develop the depth of your core connection, while you do the effort. The same is true for scissors. You know, you don't just touch the leg, you take a hold of the leg, and the leg has pressure against the hands. And that tension takes you deeper into your core. Builds the depth and the strength of your grip. That is your core. So, I'm grateful that for all I see of Pilates that's represented, I could crawl through the camera on any of it. And as you could too, we all could. We all want to be the instructor, right? I'm grateful for you because it's through whatever reflection I get back from you listening that reinforces the God-given passion to share this point of view. And if that would go away, I would stop broadcasting in a minute. But it's this thing about human nature to share what's valuable, to want to contribute to humanity and not just be human. Well, you can, because life can't live forever. Read between the lines, see behind the curtain, add two and two, direct your thinking, because if you don't, somebody else is. Geist.